Konnichiwa. Hey, today I'm just gonna be doing a short little stream, a presentation. You know, some sort of... I'll power through some points if you get my drift. It's not an extensive one, it's only about 8 slides, and it's not actually everything I'm growing. But just to give you an idea of the effort I'm putting in this year and what I'll be showing you later on. Let me go and get to it. Boop. Behold, the Meyer lemon. Now, technically, this is not a true lemon for what that means. It's more of a hybrid between the citron and this pre-existing mandarin and pomelo hybrid. For all intents and purposes, though, it's its own thing. It's been around for over 100 years. Technically thousands, but in most of the world, they've only seen it. Unlike the potato thing. And tomatoes, you know. It's like, they only existed in a certain place, and then they existed anyway, point being... Technically, this was a very common hybrid historically in the part of China it came from. But... nowadays, it's more of a worldwide fruit. It lasts very long when it's actually, you know, not just the plant, but the fruit itself. It has a long shelf life. If it's coated in the right things and kept cool, it'll last a long time. It doesn't really rot in the way that, say, an apple does. It's a pretty good fruit. And it makes a good deck plant, you know the deal. In any case, Meyer lemons are considered less tart and more sweet than an actual true lemon. Now, a lemon is also technically a hybrid because almost all citrus plants are, but anyway. As far as care goes, unless you live near the equator and, like, never experience freezing temperatures, you want to treat this as a container plant. Like, you bring it in during the winter, you bring it out during the late spring, bring it back in during the mid-autumn if you're really worried, that kind of deal. The plant itself technically remains active during the winter, so you have to, like, really babysit it. I've killed one of these things, probably 2 of them, actually. Having all the leaves fall off because it got almost no light whatsoever sitting in the house. The plant does not go to sleep during the winter and wake up during the spring. Maybe and some people can get it too, but I couldn't. It will just die. Also, it likes to be kept warm, and it doesn't like to be watered very often, but if you don't water it enough, it'll die. It is a project plant, not something you just sort of put in a good spot and forget about it. To go over the requirements, it likes full sun, obviously. Water has to be well-drained soil. Like, it can't be, like, just some spongy stuff. It actually has to have aggregate in it. You want to have the bottom either be raised or have holes all in it. It has to be able to drain. It likes the soil to be a little bit more acidic, but that's very easy to do. It's not a big deal. Temperature-wise, it's basically what I just said. It likes to be kept somewhere in the general warm region. It can be in the 80s, it could possibly hit 90 and be fine. But do not let it go low. It's best if it's kept somewhere in the 70s very often. Yeah, and that little miscellaneous note, I found this out when trying to figure out how to grow one actually large, because it can get 10 foot tall in your house. The roots have to be kept warm if you want it to actually grow. Like, large. When I say warm, some people were actually showing where they'd kept the roots at 84 degrees Fahrenheit. Obviously. Probably not going to do that myself, but we'll see. My house tends to say warm. Key limes. Key limes are neat. Like, it's nearly identical to how you take care of a Meyer lemon, but taxonomically they're further from a Meyer lemon than you might expect. They're a citron hybridized with what I'm going to call a micrantha, which is a citrus plant that runs genetically parallel with the citron and pomelos, which means that while it's still technically a hybrid like everything else, let's just say family tree-wise, it's a sister to the other two. these are typically ready to harvest by late summer, early fall, whereas a Meyer lemon might take until winter, because they don't expect there to be a winter. But it could take years before it actually grows fruit. This is the important thing. When you grow these, I've grown lemons and actually tasted them great. It takes 2 to 3 years when you have a little sapling looking thing to actually get it that big. And it doesn't physically grow very large. They kind of bonsai themselves out if you don't repot them a lot, but they need help, you know, being self-pollinated. If you don't, no, let's say you have a lot of moths in your house. If you don't leave them out and bees get on them, that kind of thing. You can just do that with a Q-tip or a very, very soft paintbrush, actually. It's kind of neat, but the point is, it takes a lot out of them. And you have to, like, really make sure that they don't get soggy, they don't completely dry out, they never get cold, that they actually do experience sunlight, and oh my god. It turns out a grow light puts out an amount of light that's like 1/100th of like the sun on your porch. It's crazy how different it is. Also, if you wonder why I'm looking over here, that's where chat would be. There's no chat, obviously. Grape. I have no idea what this grape is. I threw away everything that came with them and I just grew them. And then suddenly decided that, actually, you know what? No, we're gonna do this right. And I made an entire enclosure for it as a raised garden. These are crazy. They require a lot of care and babysitting. More so than almost any other plant you're gonna deal with. First, apparently it's recommended to remove any clusters that may appear during the first year. So if it makes fruit, take them off. The vine itself, like, needs to know that it needs to grow wider. Typically, also, grapes do not grow any fruit on what's considered an old branch or an old wood. They'll grow more vines, but the fruit's not going to grow what that is. And I'm not entirely sure what the terminal length of grapes are, but I've seen them stop. So this is where it gets tricky. You prune the vine every winter if you want to make sure you can harvest next year. It gets worse. Several sources I checked recommended you actually let the vine grow across a fence during the whole first year. Then you cut back almost all of it, except a few that are growing horizontally, leaving little vertical juts, only a few of them. Now what you're trying to do is let the old growth be a starting point, so that the second year, it'll have new growth that you can train to follow the fence line above and below. Once you do this right, it gets a little weird. It's the third year that you should start actually having grapes. And you don't want there to be that many of them, because the more grapes there are, apparently the less potent each grape will be across the entire vine. But to the point, I just planted one of these. I have another one, which I guess now I'm thankful didn't really hang in there. The roots are still white, oddly enough. Like, it's not dried up, it just isn't going. Because the point is, this thing needed to be by itself. Whenever this thing grows, I'll have pictures, but not right now. For right now, that's all it is. About knee-high. Let's see here. Next year, or I'd say next year. By the end of this year, I'll have a trellis and fence, but putting that aside. Tomatoes! Oh my god. And image source is from Burpee. Right. Probably best not to clap into the mic. These are easy. I mean, straight up, I swear to you, these are considered a weed if you really look for them. They will grow in the grass around your garden after tomatoes fall off. They will raise themselves. It's crazy how easy it is to grow tomatoes. So hard. You almost can't screw this up, because I don't. What ends up happening is if you really... I just noticed that I'm not reading the requirements. Whatever. They're right there for you to see. You can you almost can't screw this up as long as you water them and don't like crowd them in with weeds. Like, you just have to make sure they're all separated about a foot on each side from another one. Typically you want to put a cage around them or something, a little mini trellis. You need something for them to lean on because tomatoes will fall down. Trust me, they will fall down and they will never get back up. That's what a tomato cage is for. It's essentially they grow almost like like that one human condition. Too much verticality. But anyway, they grow tall enough that they can no longer support their own weight. As long as you make sure that they have something to lean on, that they don't completely dry out, but they're not soggy, but you can water them a lot. It's not a big deal. Oh, and they love heat. They freaking love heat. Bright summer day, no big deal. Most of them. There are some breeds that don't. The point is, they'll do really well. As long as you put them in decent soil, maybe add some fertilizer right before the fruits really start to grow. Like when they're still just having flowers, but not much. These will grow in anything except like lifeless grainy dust. They will grow straight in mud. Just don't worry too much. If you start growing them, treat them like you would a houseplant that just happens to be outside. Watermelons. Okay, these things can be infuriating. They're easy to grow. They really are. That's not a problem. They will produce fruit that will rot on the vine. I've never tried elevating them with a cradle, a hammock, a mock bonfire, but that's what I'm gonna do this year. Apparently, belly rot is an extremely common thing for them. And if you think about it from the plant's point of view, not that it has one, but just saying, why not? It gets the seeds out of the fruit, and like, it gets the seeds essentially in the ground as the fruit itself is becoming compost. For humans who want to preserve these things to eat them the way you normally do, you need to keep it off the ground. You can use pine needles, you can use anything that is chopsticks, really. Anything soft enough. Or you can just literally, like I said, build a little hammock. The usual rules: don't let them dry out, water them a couple times a week, you know the drill, same as tomatoes. You can't really screw it up, just don't over fertilize or anything weird like that. Cucumbers are silly. They're very easy. You treat them the same as you other plants, no big deal. Like, you notice that with all these, I'm only growing easy stuff. Except the grapes, oh my god. You want to water these heavily once they really start growing. But once again, make sure wherever you're watering them, it has a way for the water to drain out. Like, don't have like a solid plastic bottom, or you're gonna have a lot of fungus. Mildew, mosquitoes, like, it could be terrible. You want to give them a well thought out trellis or fence to grow on, because once they start, they're going to go fast. They need to actually be able to hang those cucumbers, or else they will not, like, if they're on the ground, they'll rot. Here's the thing. Cucumbers also have this sort of back and forth, depending on who you ask, deal. Where allegedly, you want to pick them when they're so small. Like, you want them to be... This is confusing. Like, depending on the person, right? Like, I was gonna say the length of your hand, but that's too long for me. But if you're like a 4'7" girl, it might be fine. Like, it's confusing. Dangerous territory here, but we're just gonna throw out numbers. Don't let them grow more than 4 inches. Like, if you want them to taste the way you normally expect a cucumber to taste. Or if you want to make pickles. If you wait till they're like 7 inches, it's going to be bitter, the rind's going to be thick, and it might be slightly more poisonous. I can't remember. So, you know, I'm not a medical doctor here, but you probably shouldn't let them grow until they're starting to turn yellow. Because at that point, they're not really food anymore. Not for humans. Okay, one more thing, and this is my baby. Boop. Look at that. Oh my god. Okay, the moonflower. My god, I love these things, right? But trying to find the right seeds for them, or even the right picture, I'm not kidding, this took me like 10 minutes of constantly going through pictures to find one that looked right. It's very difficult, because morning glories are not the same thing as a moonflower. You'll see moonflowers listed as evening glories, but what you're looking at is a morning glory. That happens to be white. That's not the same thing. There are other ones that have strange leaves that are more pointy and dark. That's not them either. What you see on this picture, with my hand that you can't see moving because I don't have a tracker on it. That thing, it makes this odd sort of tube. It looks kind of like a, one of those fathead drill bits, like for concrete or something. That's a moonflower. It then pops open and releases this incredibly potent fragrance. It's so good. Oh my god. Alright, check it. They grow incrementally. So the vine will grow and make these little clusters, and then it'll get really big, and then it'll start having a tube come out with a head on it. And then the head gets longer, the tube gets longer, and then it will turn, you'll see the white part, but it won't be open. They will grow, so unlike most morning glories, you'll be like, because they don't put out as many mini vines, it'll be like, oh, this is important to know. They take days to go from the flower obviously being there to it opening. So you have like 4 days with like sort of a progression chart in front of you, and possibly in front of your window if you plant it there, of like tiny tube with a head, bigger tube with a bigger head, that same whisk looking thing now with white opening, and then an open flower. They open as soon as the sun is no longer on the leaves, depending. That's my experience. If you're getting the right ones. Ipomoya alba. Not specifically morning glories or tatua or whatever, I forget the datura? I don't know. You know you get the right seeds if the seeds are like pinky nail sized or bigger. Like possibly in the entire segment of your pinky, like the last one. Like the really big ones are almost that big. They're these giant yellow, like the size of a pea. Like, except, you know, yeah, anyway. They're cute. If you get these tiny little ones that are like black or whatever, that's morning glories. It's really annoying to get them mixed up, but companies label them the same thing. The clusters, I'll show you a picture later, I'll probably just post on Twitter. The clusters for these look like, I don't know how to describe it, like a walnut? Sort of? Chestnut? Like, you crack it open like, and it's full of those big seeds. More in segments. Like a tree, oddly enough. These things are just, I love them so much. And they're one of those plants that have been everywhere. They're super popular. I mean, they were really big in apparently Japan before. We've been all across, they're all across the United States. Like, they're all across the entirety of North and South America as far as I'm aware. They love hot places. They absolutely can handle the heat where I live. And it can reach over 100 degrees. You just want to keep them a little bit wet, but if they're near the edge of your house and you have any condensation drip, they're fine. Getting pictures of them can be tricky. Like this one right here, I had to assume the phone just brightened it up the way mine would. Because they will not open when there is too much light outside. It's kind of crazy. But anyway, oh yeah, right. The seed pod looks like a fig. Like it looks just like a fig. But anyway. Last slide. Boop. This is the front and back of my current raised garden setup. You can see that the grape exists in a further raised level in the middle. Why am I pointing? Further raised level in the middle. This may not be ideal. I understand that some people will be like, what are you doing? But that's cool. The entire point here is to learn. Everything is about learning. If this doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it does work, I can show other people that it worked and exactly what I did and what I bought and how I did it. this is sitting on top of tilled ground. The side you see that has the odd yin-yang thing going on. But there's nothing... Oh yeah, on the ground is bone and blood meal. And... I think a little bit of granule fertilizer. Typically meant for roses or something, I forget. It's just flower fertilizer. Colorful stuff you should never use. On top of that is just generic garden soil. That's all. The plants themselves don't even make contact with the stuff that's underneath. Not yet. These are 6 blueberry bushes. They're, you may notice that 3 are in pots and 3 aren't. Okay, this is weird. The 3 that are in pots were doing okay. The 3 that aren't were dead. The 3 that aren't came back to life. The 3 that were in the pots suddenly died. I'm waiting to see if they come back. We'll see. Now that they're in the ground and I have, like, they're more stable than just sitting on top of something in a container. If those 3 in the back grow back the way they're supposed to, I'm going to find out if keeping them in a container makes them more stable and prone to verticality. Because I'm hoping that by doing so, I actually, you know, give them a, the ability... I'm trying to train them to grow vertical, is what I'm saying, to make them tall. Whereas the ones on the ground, I'm going to let them do whatever they want to. Once again, experiment. I just want to see what happens. That thing in the bottom right there is just a big strawberry forb. By the way, I learned the word forb today. Okay, forb is, and I quote, an herbaceous non-woody flowering plant that is not grass, sedge, or rush. As far as I can tell, it essentially means anything that wanders, meanders, or trails is an herb and doesn't climb, but rather extends itself by shooting at a tendril and putting growth pockets occasionally across the length of it. Like little roots will happen in leaves and a flower. Oh, and they typically are, or not even typically, I think forbs are specifically flowering herbs as well. Let's see here. If the ones in the back do resettle, they grow, everything's fine, but it seems like they're, like I look at them and it seems like they're stunted, which I won't be able to tell really, but if something looks weird. The pots are thin, they're plastic. They can just be cut through and released. To be honest, I probably will end up doing that anyway. They're not deep in the ground, they're essentially just, they're pushed flat onto heavily compressed like garden soil and then surrounded just to keep them stable. Nothing you see here is meant to last long term. It's all meant for one season. If they do well, add more. But everything is that strawberry there will have 2 or 3 before sisters added. Strawberries have a tendency to wander like crazy, hence like I said. And when they do, they'll make a patch. I want them to just... Oh, and they don't seem to go very deep either. At least not the little shoots. I want them to wander between the bushes, because there's an area there of like 2 foot between everything in every direction. It's hard to tell from the perspective that's there. Oh, right, I didn't talk about the other side. The other side right now, which is full of random weeds and sunflowers, oh, I felt so bad about that, was my annual garden from last year. There is a trampoline sheet? Oh, a trampoline bottom in the bottom of it. The entire thing was just in the yard, it was taken apart, it was something old that someone left behind. Now I thought, this lets water through, this will let roots through, but it'll keep all this grass that keeps trying to grow up, no matter what I do, from growing through it. So what always happens is, grass grew under the wood and came around. Grass grew on top of it from people mowing the lawn around me. Anything that drips in there caused that. And sunflowers is what I grew in there last year, because of course I did, because I like... Not like I like flowers or anything, God. Anyway. That's where I'm gonna have my tomatoes, my cucumbers, my watermelons. feel there's at least one more thing I'm gonna add, but probably just that. The sunflowers I'm gonna have to dig out. There's some perennials in there that shouldn't be in there anymore, but may have lived like lucerne. Lucerne? No, that's a Honda. I forget what they're called. But the things that look suspicious, like 5-pointed leaves. Anyway, I gotta take those out if they come back. They take like a year to grow and then they make this big conal flower and it's really pretty. But if they don't grow, they don't grow. And also, ants eat them. I'm not kidding. Ants eat them. It's crazy. Like raspberries, ants will just build a nest. Ants will build a nest in them and eat them. Where am I from? Anyway, point being, as I update this, there'll be more and more pictures, probably mostly on my Twitter, but I'm probably going to do updates on my gardening every couple of weeks or so. Right now, I'm already bringing stuff home to go over this with burlap at the corners. Going to dig out everything, probably try to retill a little bit. Go over it with brand new dirt after I cover a lot of that up. Dig out every single plant that is sticking out, if I can. And we'll start again. Oh, also a 50-foot sucker hose. Because the annual side needs tons of water, the perennial side doesn't. The grape really doesn't, but if it grows a lot later, it would probably really appreciate having a deep source of water nearby. I'm also sitting on a natural aquifer, so that's great, but that's neither here nor there. God, who knows how many years it'll take the grape to reach that. Anyway, that's the entire presentation. I spent most of it staring at the non-existent chat for some reason. I have 2 monitors, it's crazy. If you like this, for some reason, tune in next time, there'll be more of these. Check my Twitter if you just want to see random pictures of cats and flowers, because that's what I do. Hashtag not a grandma. I have so many red leaf plants to show too. The next one will probably be my potted plant showcase. So if you like that kind of thing, please stop by. I'd appreciate it. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time. Later.